all the TED Talks I've seen had at least one thing in common. The great enthusiasm of the speaker or the performer. An enthusiastic expression, not like what I'm expressing myself now at this moment. You may feel that I'm not coming out to you. I'm like holding back and just hoping the microphone and maybe the camera will help me reach you, dear audience. But that's not enough. I must give myself to you. Which means that my mind, will, body, and senses have to take space needed for the task. And then the enthusiasm is expressed in a way that gets out to all of you in the audience. So people usually open up like this. What we perceive as enthusiasm is 100% focus on everything else but ourselves. A focus with expression of heightened energy in our space of communication that embraces the context and us as individuals. This ability is something that is important for all of us, and the good thing is that is innate for all of us. It kicks in automatically when necessity and enthusiasm are in charge. Expression is man's most important tool. It's a part of everything we do, everything we interact with, our interactions with others, our interactions with ourselves. All actions rest in interaction, which confirms that the smallest unity is two. So to communicate, you need expression. Expression is an enabler. It enables you to communicate, to learn, to develop, to create, and so forth. And that constitutes that everything is communication. But without expression, there is no communication. And there is no creation without expression. Therefore, expression is man's most important tool. How do we perceive enthusiasm? It is a radiant and beaming and healthy, and sometimes we call it charisma, something that is nourishing. If you see a group of small children, they all have charisma. Say if you see a group of small children in kindergarten about the age of 3 and 4, we say they all have charisma. But maybe one doesn't show charisma, and all adults think that child is sick. If you, on the other hand, look at a group of 20 people on the university campus about the age of 20, only one of them has charisma. So we conclude that that person at hand must be a politician or an actor, someone that needs to influence others through his or her expression. The interesting thing is, what has happened in the time span of 15 years? Why have we lost this way of being? This greatness of having the expressive innate space we call charisma. And why do we accept this loss? What has happened? What has influenced us? And what have we trained for those 15 years? We have accepted and trained drawback, downsizing of our attributes and expressive abilities. You all know this classical picture. I gather you've all seen it before. It's about 500-year-old drawing by Leonardo da Vinci the Vitruvian Man, which I call the Leonardo Man. For me, this drawing shows a man's basic space, the energy space that everybody has and everybody needs to be in balance, in harmony, and we perceive as charisma. But most of us live daily like this, in drawback. And that causes tension in the body, and it conditions the mind. These are things we train in daily life, so we reduce our expressive capacity. What are the expressive attributes and abilities of the mind, and how do we perceive them? What happens if I say to you, you're not allowed to think about white rabbits? Your mind is full of white rabbits, isn't it? And they may even be jumping around. Why did your mind do something that you're not allowed to do? Well, the mind has a focus in thought, or be conscious of what is not allowed to do, and uses expression to do so, and draws forth a picture of what is in question. You got a suggestion from me in the form of a request, and that suggestion brought forth to your mind the picture of the white rabbits. Now, if I say to you, you're not allowed to think about Dalimba, what happens? Your mind goes blank at first, because you don't have a picture of Dalimba. But usually the following reaction is that you try to find out who or what Dalimba is. Is it an Indian god, a washing machine, a new app? Your fantasy goes on because you want to know what or who Dalimba is. Why? Because the attribute of curiosity, the innate inquisitiveness, is alive and active in you. It is like a child that tries to understand, that tries to create an understanding by saying the word Dalimba out loud and by expressing it clearly for itself, tries to depict in its mind space the meaning of what it has heard. Here's an example. You've been communicating with Miss Jensdottir at the bank, on the phone, but the first time you met her, you have this feeling that you're looking at the wrong person. Why? Because when you spoke to Miss Jensdottir on the phone the first time, you envisioned somebody. That means that you intuitively were creating an image of a person, an expression in your mind. This is not just our imagination. This is a point of orientation. By creating a focus point, we are making whole the encounter with just a person's voice. Here the mind is working in pictures. When I mentioned the white rabbits, you saw them in your so-called mind's eye. You envisioned these rabbits automatically at that moment. I mentioned them, expressing them to yourself. But they were not only in your mind's eye, they were occupying mind space. This mind is also working in space. And maybe it is not very often that we think of mind space. I want you all to envision for yourself the greatest mountain you have ever seen. Do it now. See this mountain in full size now at this moment. Okay. Now I want you to put your fingers together like this. All of you. Put your fingers together like this. And imagine a new stamp between the fingers. And on the stamp is a picture of the same mountain. Look at the stamp and see the mountain. Okay, now let the stamp fall and just envision the mountain again as you did before. Did you sense a difference of the focus of the mind space that the mind used? Did you experience how the mind changed focus space? This, I think, is very important because we are more or less using stamp-size focus in daily life, and thereby reinforcing it as our main space in our work and study life. That conditions our mind space. Partly, therefore, many believe that charisma is an exceptional attribute for the few, and therefore they are not using the vastness of their mind space in daily activities. Another simple example of mind space is a gesture many people make when they talk about their mind. They point to their head. And when they do so, you perceive how the picture they had in mind just shrinks, moves to the almost stamp-size space. You can see it in their eyes and in their body. Here we are simply confusing the mind with the brain. The body and senses are always active participants in your mind work, which we are all usually not aware of in daily life. When we see children do something they are absorbed in totally, and how the child is opening its body and moving open mouth into more anticipating position, slowing down to improve its comprehension. We have another good example elsewhere in life. A person watching its favorite soccer team coming close to scoring a goal opens his mouth wide as he follows the ball through the air and goes into slow motion. And yes, it's a goal. To open the mouth wide and go into slow motion is nothing exceptional for children or soccer fans. We all do this in interesting situations. We open our body position out of expectation to be able to absorb all the details so we won't miss out on anything that happens in such a short time span. With slow motion, we enlarge our perception of details by delaying time through our body and senses, going into stillness, and thereby using flow of stillness for total experience. It's a sort of a time machine. And here we are at the heart of communication and expression. The essential attribute, which is listening. Listening that rests in clarity of being, in a total presence of body-mind. And that means you're in 100% focus on everything else but yourself. But you're in total heightened experience and awareness. Slow motion is not just something Akira Kurosawa introduced in films in 1952. Could somebody help me here? Can I invite someone to the stage to help me a little? Yeah? Did you feel you hesitated a little?
Yes.
Okay. Should we try again? Did you notice you hesitated again? No. A little? A little bit. Yes, a little bit. Okay. What I did, I put myself in a position of openness, totally, and I did everything by the rules of handshake. I looked into his eye, I came forward, I met him, and I put my hand forth, and just before you took my hand, I closed my hand. And this is something that we very often do. Thank you very much. And it's not nice to trick people in the audience. What my helper here presented and demonstrated is that we all notice the energy shifts and what is happening in other people on a very subtle scale. This is the attribute of listening at work. We can go to a movie or a theater performance and understand in our way everything that is being expressed. Why? Because through listening, our life interactions have taught and trained us, and we know this total language of mind-body expression. As I can close my hand, which I just demonstrated, we all can. And we can close other parts of our bodies, and we have all been doing that through the years. We also do this by closing our feet when we walk. So we are not meeting Mother Earth, and we are not using gravity to flow to help us. So if you try that just in your walk daily, that you go to the ball of your foot and open the ball of the foot, think a meter into the ground, see what happens. I hope you try this little example I gave you now. And I suggest, don't be afraid to state the obvious. It is an essential part of creativity. Life is not a quiz show. It is your creative process, and you develop it through expression.